everybody, welcome to my channel, A Good Listen, where I usually sit here and tell you about a recent audiobook that I've listened to in story format, and at the end of the video I would reveal the book where that story has come from. But today I'm going to do something a little different because I have something really cool that I thought about doing and I'm really excited to do it. So we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to cover Audible books. We are going to be covering magazines. So two of these magazines, I don't know if you guys can see them. Two of these magazines are from Life, and this is their the world's scariest places or haunted places. They have their little series going on. This one is actually from Centennial Legends, but I decided to cover the top 3 to 5 stories in each one of these magazines. My top 3 to 5 stories out of these magazines. At the end of the video, I will reveal which magazine the stories have come from. So, without further ado, let's get into today's story. Somewhere in the Plainfield, Wisconsin cemetery lies an unmarked grave belonging to the man who, thanks to his Hollywood influence, may be America's most infamous serial killer. In the same burial ground lies what remains of the woman he dug up in the 1950s and turned into a variety of handicrafts. Not surprisingly, the place is said to be haunted by the restless soul of one of the friend's victims, unnamed in death as in life, prowling the lonely graves. In November 1957, Plainfield was shaken to its core after 58-year-old Bernice Warden, owner of the local hardware store, disappeared. Her son told the local sheriff that he'd found blood in the store and that a 51-year-old local handyman named Ed Gein had recently came in looking for antifreeze. Tracing Gein down to the ramshackle, isolated farmhouse where the odd man had lived alone since the death of his mother, the sheriff found Warden hanging by her feet, decapitated in the shed. But that was only the beginning of the horror. In the garbage-strewn house, law enforcement officers found chairs reupholstered with fatty human skin, a soup bowl made from a human skull, and a shade pool made of lips, masks made from human faces, a belt made of female nipples, a vest made from a female torso, embalming supplies, and anatomy books and detective magazines that Gein read by kerosene lamps. There were also human heads, one belonging to Mary Hogan, who had run a Plainfield tavern and had mysteriously disappeared in 1954. In the end, the remains of 11 women were discovered in the house. 2 of them, Hogan and Warden, Gein claimed to have shot to death. 9 had been, he said, unearthed from local graves. Many of them had been tanned, as with taxidermy, and their flesh used by Gein as garments. Gein's mother, Augusta, who was a religious woman, subjected her unstable son to ceaseless rants about the evils of women. Her alcoholic husband, George, died in 1940, followed by Gein's brother, Henry, under mysterious circumstances in 1994, leaving Gein to share the house with his mother, the love of his life. But when Augusta, too, died in 1945, Gein found himself alone. Well, almost. The necrophiliac bachelor started digging up graves, using the remains of female bodies for company. He dressed in women's clothes, some fashioned from corpses, wishing that he had been born a woman. Gein's oblivious neighbors found him mostly harmless. Locals did, however, acknowledge that he was odd. He talked obsessively, for instance, about crime and women, Declared insane in 1958, Geen died of cancer at age 77 in a mental health institution. But his perverse legacy endures, having inspired some of the greatest horror films ever made. Among them, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Silence of the Lambs, and a little known classic called Deranged. Lastly, Norman Bates' character from the movie Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock was also based on Geen. The Winchester Mystery House first opened to the public in San Jose, California in 1923. The rumors about the maze-like Victorian mansion started soon after its eccentric owner, Sarah Winchester, began her elaborate construction. Through the bizarre structures, odd nooks and crannies, past doors that open into walls, and up staircases that go nowhere. There are now 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bedrooms, and 6 kitchens. Tourists are warned against wandering off. They could be lost for hours. This is how the story goes. After losing both her only child and her husband in New England, Winchester, the heiress to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company fortune, consulted a Boston psychic. He told her that her family was cursed by the souls, American Indians and Civil War soldiers among them, who had been killed by the Winchester rifles. The only way to placate those restless spirits was to build a rambling house for them to inhabit. Winchester moved to California, where she bought an unfinished farmhouse in 1886. For the next 36 years, she renovated and rebuilt her home, reportedly hiring construction workers to work around the clock. As long as the hammering continued, the rumor went she could stay alive. The truth, however, is somewhat more complicated. Winchester was later crippled with rheumatoid arthritis and, having lost her looks, rarely ventured outside. Her obsessive need for privacy and refusal to speak publicly allowed yellow journalists and noisy neighbors to say anything they wanted about her with impunity. And of course, they did. But the fact remains that visitors and staff alike claim to hear footsteps and breathing, see apparitions from other eras, find locked doors suddenly open, and even smell chicken soup. In the end, the 1920s journalist was not far off when she compared the eerie structure to the House of Usher. Years after the legendary Queen Mary luxury liner was permanently docked as a hotel and tourist attraction in Long Beach, California, a marine engineer named John Smith had an unsettling experience while prowling the ship late at night. In a deserted staircase, Smith heard the sound of water rushing and men screaming, but no one was there. Later, Smith learned that in 1942, when the liner was being used in World War II, it collided with its companion vessel on its way to Scotland. The companion vessel was immediately cut into two and sank, killing 338 men. It's not surprising that a more than 80-year-old ship with more than 1,000 ocean crossings and a reported 49 deaths behind it would have a reputation for being haunted. Room B34 is widely believed to be the most haunted on the ship, a site where a family was allegedly murdered. But author Brian Clune says this is a fiction created by former owners who wanted to use the unoccupied space as part of a tourist attraction. The real site of the murders, Clune says, is room B474, which is, of course, haunted, as are the B deck, where a morgue and an isolation room were located during World War II, the engine room, the green room, and an area known as Shaft Alley. But the most spirited area on the ship may be the former first class pool area. home to little Jackie, a 5 or 6-year-old girl who is perhaps the ship's most famous ghost. She is playful and talkative, her voice having been allegedly caught many times on tape. Sadly, she is said to remain on the ship because she is looking for her mother, whom she sometimes cries out for. Another pool room ghost is known as Grumpy, a growling, cigarette-smoking spirit said to haunt the storage area beneath the pool. And choking sounds near the old hospital area allegedly emanate from the ghost of an officer who died after drinking poison that he thought was gin. Still, other ghosts include the Lady in White, who is often seen dancing to unheard music in the Queen's salon, and the spirit of an 18-year-old crewman, John, who was crushed by airtight door number 13 in Shaft Alley while playing chicken with his coworkers. These days, the Grand Ship capitalizes on its spooky reputation by offering haunted tours, interactive attractions, and seances. There's even a dinner special called Dining with the Spirits, which allows you to pair paranormal investigations with more earthbound spirits. In 1863, Borley Rectory was built in England, allegedly over a monastery. According to local legend, that was where a monk and a nun were murdered after falling in love and trying to elope. The house's first residents and locals claimed to see the nun's ghost walking on a path that became known as the Nun's Walk. Among other phenomena, a ghostly figure was also seen looking through a window. But none of this became widely known until the late 1920s, when the new rector, the Reverend Guy Eric Smith, began to witness the spectral events and became distressed. So he reached out to controversial psychic researcher Henry Price. But when Price arrived to investigate, all hell broke loose, literally, leading him to call Borley, quote, the most haunted house in England, end quote. Keys flew from locks, and pebbles and coins rained from nowhere. Soon after, the Smiths fled the house when publicity made Borley arguably the first mass media covered haunting. In 1930, a new rector moved in but left in 1935 after the supposed spirits became particularly attached to his wife, Marianne, writing messages on the walls like, "Marianne, please help." After Price took up residence in 1937, intending to conduct further experiments, a message in a seance predicted that the rectory would be destroyed in a fire. Nearly 1 year later, a fire gutted Borley Rectory. In 1944, the building's remains were demolished. A live photographer visited and shot the site, and one of his images captured what appeared to be a brick levitating in the doorway. That may have been the last haunting at the Burley, but unfortunately, the haunting reportedly continued at a nearby church. And if you guys enjoyed today's stories, then I highly encourage you guys to either order or pick up your own copy of Life's the World's Most Haunted Places, Creepy, Ghostly, and Notorious Spots. Oh my gosh, that was so corny. Anyways, again, if you guys enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. If you guys are interested in following me on any of my other social media platforms, all my social media handles are listed down below. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for stopping by, and bye.